and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I'm Taylor Rockwell. Daryl Grove is not with me in studio, so instead I talked to U.S. Soccer presidential candidate Kyle Martino. We discussed the final days of his campaign in the run-up to the election on February 10th, his relationship with the other candidates, the specifics of his platform, many, many other topics. It's a comprehensive chat in under 30 minutes, so without further ado, joining me now, I've got candidate for U.S. Soccer's presidency, Kyle Martino. Kyle, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. We had Herculez Gomez on like 2 weeks ago, and I think his child was not feeling well either. So it seems like maybe we're just like a bad streak for people who come on the show.
Yeah, well, my child's feeling good. My babysitter called in sick.
There it is. Okay.
You're going to hear Major Martino in the background here, butting in sometimes.
Well, that works. Well, we got lots to discuss, but the first thing I wanted to ask you about, we were at the presidential forum in Philadelphia, we being myself and my co-host Daryl.
I saw you.
Yeah, that's right. We spoke. And I'm really curious. So for those who didn't see, the candidates entered from like stage left, departed stage right. Were you guys all being held in one space? Were you all like hanging out chatting, or was it like one by one being brought in?
It was one by one. There was a green room in the back, and there were several candidates that sat together and chatted, and we had great discussion, and there were a few candidates that decided not to sit back there with us, which I thought was interesting. So, we one by one went from the green room to the side stage and then went up there.
So speaking of some of those candidates, I did want to ask you a bit about kind of the way the campaign has been conducted. There's been a lot said during the campaign. I'm wondering how your relationship with some of the candidates has changed or evolved since you announced your candidacy.
Well, it hasn't really changed or evolved in either way. I think I've gotten to know a few people I didn't know before, and two people that come to mind, Steve Gans and Michael Winograd. I've gotten the opportunity to speak to both of them several times, and they're impressive guys. They love the game. Both of them played it, and it has been a pleasure to just trade notes with each other. And some things we agree on, some things we disagree on, but we have great conversation. So that's evolved. My relationships with athletes go back a long way, and they're the same that they were before we got into this race. The two relationships I was hoping would evolve, but hasn't at all, is with Cassie and Carlos. Just like all the other candidates, I've reached out to them a couple times to try and communicate, and they've rebuffed those requests and offers, and it's just really disappointing that they don't see any interest or see that there's anything positive that can come out of conversation with other candidates. I can't speak for anyone else, but if they're not reaching out or communicating with me, I find it hard to believe that they're communicating with anyone, which is disappointing because collaboration and unity, and those are two really important things at this inflection point to make sure that we take the organization forward. So I was hoping that they showed an interest in that, and I haven't seen it yet. But we still have a little over a week to go, so maybe I'll hear from them soon.
No, there's not much time left, but maybe you will. But speaking of that, as you alluded to, the election, February 10th, what are you going to be doing on Election Day, and how are you expecting that process to go? How do you expect that day to go?
Well, I don't think anyone knows how that's going to go. It's never happened before. So 3 terms of an unchallenged president is not good for U.S. soccer. And I was actually surprised a little bit, and I give Sunil credit. He went and spoke, and I think the video's gone viral now.
Mm-hmm. We talked about it yesterday,
it's disappointing that he would choose a night of celebration for youth soccer to go on, go on that platform and take such a negative tone. He has the right to push back on things that upset him, the challenges to his leadership, challenges to some of the systems. So he absolutely has every right to do that. That's just not the right place to do that. That was disappointing. But he said, which I was a bit surprised during that speech, that a 3 terms of a unchallenged president is bad for U.S. soccer, and I agree with him. And so, finally we're going to get an election where the membership are going to get to make a choice on the leader that they want moving forward. But no one has any idea what it's going to be like down there. So your guess is as good as mine.
Well, do you have any idea in terms of the way the different groups are leaning? I know it was reported by Sports Illustrated that the Athletes Council was intending to vote as a block. Have you talked to them? Do you have any idea which way they're leaning?
No, I know that they're thinking about it. I don't know if they're going to vote as a block or not. I know the youth want to do that as well, because they know the pros basically vote as a block in every election, and the fact that they do and the athletes have been with them to a certain extent every election meant that an election wasn't necessary because it was such a powerful block for someone leading into a campaign. So Kathy has, which isn't a secret to anyone now, the support of Major League Soccer. So that gives her definitely a head start over everyone going into the election. We can do our calculus, and we do have all of our models showing where we stand in the election. And, our models tell us that we're a front runner. And, that's what it feels like when you're on the phone all day long with associations. But I don't trust the math right now. I trust the membership, and the membership are going to make the decision to push a button for change. And I think the majority of the membership know the difference between the optics of change and actual change, and are going to vote for actual change.
It was maybe not reported, but discussed a couple weeks ago that there was some speculation that you and Eric Winalda might have some conversations, or might have had some conversations about potentially throwing support behind one or another if maybe Cordero or Carter seemed like they were running away with it. Is there any truth to those rumors? Have you guys had those types of conversations, or has it been pretty separate for the most part?
We've had that conversation. I've had that conversation with several candidates, I at this point am focusing on my campaign and doing the best I can to make sure I protect us from the status quo. And as far as making deals, I'm not making deals. That's not how I operate. I think one of the reasons I'm a front runner is my level of integrity is known across the soccer landscape, and that's why I'm one of the only candidates to have people willing to publicly go out and support. And I have an adult association that's done that, a youth association that's done that, grassroots movements that are doing that, and multiple players that have done that. And a political landscape where, it is difficult to come out and support someone because, political retribution and patronage, that's how this thing has been run in the past. So I'm so grateful for and humbled by the public support. But one of the reasons people feel confident they can do that is I'm not the type of person that does deals. So if I'm not winning this election and I'm losing votes and I got to drop out and support someone, I have absolutely no problem doing that. And that decision I haven't made yet who that will be. And one of the reasons I haven't made that is the athlete in me is a competitor who thinks about getting to the goal and making sure you accomplish what you set out to accomplish. So my election, the win-lose binary decision isn't me being president or not. It's making sure the wrong person isn't president. And that's what got me in this. And I give all the candidates credit. The reason that we're going to get change and we're going to get a new president has to do with all of us coming forward. So at the end of this, the best way I can make sure we have the right leader is to be that leader.
I do want to get to your campaign, especially Everyone's Game, the progress plan that you put out a while back. But you said you want to make sure the wrong person doesn't become president. Do you feel that one of these candidates is the wrong person to be the president?
Well, I don't think it's important to call people out individually. I think the membership have made it pretty clear who they think would be the status quo. And right now, it feels like heartache and heartbreak to not have the men in the World Cup. But I think people have gotten over that hysteria and recognize the amazing opportunity we have right now to finally be self-aware, to be self-critical, and show humility and understand where we've gotten it wrong and elect a president that's going to get it right. So there are definitely people getting support from the inside, and getting support from board members who had the opportunity to protect us from this low point and haven't been able to do that. And instead of showing accountability and understanding that they're culpable in what they've gotten us into, they're working really hard to elect people that might keep us there.
Mm-hmm. All right, well then let's look at your campaign, shall we? Because I wanted to talk about Everyone's Game. I know you published it a while back, and then you had your local club handing it out at the presidential forum. What went into
that was amazing. Sorry, that was just so much fun to have an under-15 team from a club I grew up playing for, and it's beachside, and the club director is Mickey Kites, and he was at my wedding. He's one of the most important people in my life, so it was cool to bust those down and let them run through the convention and see all the cool things at the exhibits.
I like that they were in a full kit too. It had the unified approach. It looked good.
Well, I mean, they knew that the Toka machine was in there. Eddie Lewis. I don't know if you got a chance to check that out while you're there. Eddie Lewis, a buddy of mine that I played with for the U.S. team, has this incredible machine that shoots many soccer balls at you. And if I could afford it right now, I'd have one in my basement for sure.
I did not see that, and now I want one. So thank you for that.
Oh, yeah, you got to check it out.
That might have to be a TSS expense. But I wanted to talk about Everyone's Game. What went into the creation of that document? How did you coming away with all of those different plans that you have?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I'm actually really surprised that other candidates haven't made that a priority to put a vision out there and a very a substantive and descriptive idea of what you're going to do once you get into the office of president. And I immediately, before I even came into the election, knew, you know what, Kyle, the way to go about this is to just act as if you're president right now. So I quit my job and I began building a board. And so I had a summit in Manhattan for 2 days, and I filled it with 28 people that ran the entire spectrum in this country, a very diverse group, from World Cup winners to fans, administrators, media executives, lawyers, directors of coaching, presidents of associations. And I basically said, we need to fix U.S. soccer. How do we do it? And the first day I had a business consultant come in who is a very high-priced business consultant, but fortunately I got it gratis because it's my father. And my dad worked for IBM for 50 years. He, in his retirement, is a business consultant that goes into Fortune 500 companies and tries to help them with market strategy and IPOs and other things. And he ran a strategy session day one. And then day two, I ran the meeting to find solutions and start to author a vision for U.S. soccer. And out of that came a skeleton plan that proved how the efficacy of a diverse group, people bringing many different areas of expertise, but also the equality in the room was apparent, where World Cup winners were asking state association, DOCs, their advice on certain issues or help them understand certain things about the soccer landscape. And then I flew around the country and got on the phone to flesh it out with all the 55 associations. And that's why it's December 4th and 5th was the summit. And then January 15th, we published the plan. And, the vision doesn't have my name on it because, as my slogan, Everyone's Game, suggests, no one owns this, and it's no one's divine right to make unilateral decisions for soccer in this country. So that plan has the voice of hundreds of members and what they believe in and what they want. And now the membership can elect ideas and hold me accountable to a vision that I've already put out that will be a working document that we use together to figure this thing out.
So you met with these state associations. Was there one primary issue? Was there one very common issue that you heard throughout, or was it pretty varied given that they are 50 different state associations?
Well, yeah, I heard one common complaint, and it's a macro one, and it really helps you understand if there's any panacea trying to address this. It's that the Federation organization anymore. It serves one of the membership, and they felt the Federation wasn't listening to them and was dictating to them and creating macro, holistic, technical programs that impacted the membership in ways that the federation couldn't have known because they didn't ask for help in making those decisions. So that ended up being the reoccurring theme across all 55 associations, is that they just don't feel they're being heard anymore and don't have trust in the leadership. So there isn't any one panacea. I mean, there's no silver bullet, but if there was one area of consequence that needs focus immediately, it's to show the requisite humility that the soccer house hasn't been able to get across. That we need help. We need help in these solutions, and we need to include the membership in that conversation. And then what's incredibly important, get into the technical space to get rid of the market confusion that's out of.
Hey folks, as you can hear, the audio got a little dodgy, so I called Kyle back on a different line, a better line I would say, but you can definitely hear the difference in the audio, so that's why that's the case. We'll get back to that conversation here in just a second, but first...
Hey, this is Daryl cutting in.
And Taylor is also still here.
Hello. So I'm cutting into the interview. Obviously, I'm not in the room while you're doing the interview, and the interview's in the future when we're recording this.
Yep.
So I don't know what you've asked Kyle Martino, but I'm hoping that you have asked him about the joys of using Squarespace to create his website, everybodysgameusa.com.
I mean, obviously that's what I've done. In fact, it's just been a series of questions about the various TSS sponsors.
Right?
Yes.
So it's the Kyle Martino interview sponsored by Squarespace.
Obviously.
Well, this episode really is sponsored by Squarespace. And as we mentioned, I'm very confident that Squarespace is what Kyle Martino used to build his website. And I'll guarantee, even if Taylor isn't brave enough to ask the tough questions about website design, that I'll guarantee that whoever designed Kyle's website found it very easy to do. Because I know when we built the Total Soccer Show website, I found it very easy to do.
And I believe I promised in the live show that if I were U.S. Soccer president and I was redesigning the U.S. Soccer website, you would be the one to have to do it. So we can use Squarespace for that as well.
You'd subcontract me. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah. So if you're looking to build a website, whether it's about soccer, it's about running for U.S. Soccer president, or it's about maybe tracking young Americans overseas, or anything non-soccer related. If you've got a business you want to set up, it has a lot of commercial stuff already built in. You can sell through Squarespace.com. Then go to Squarespace.com. You get a free trial where you can literally build the website. Not literally is the wrong word. Where you can actually build the website and see what it looks like without paying a penny. Then when you're ready to launch, you can use the discount code TSS for 10% off your first purchase of a Squarespace website.
That's smart by Squarespace, because I was thinking if you're a presidential candidate, like the election is less than a month away, so if they did like a 1-month trial, you could just build your website, launch it, see what happens, and then at the end just, I'm good.
You mean the website for when you win?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or just like, no, but you could do your platform.
Congratulations me website.
Well, no, it's like if you could build your platform, but then if you don't win, then whatever, I don't need this website anymore. That's what I'm saying. But they've thought around that.
I doubt that's what Mr. Martino has done.
I'm guessing so.
All right, I'm going to let you get back to the interview with just one final reminder. Go to squarespace.com. When you launch, use the discount code TSS.
Thank you again to Squarespace for sponsoring today's show. Thank you to Daryl for taking the time to record that with me. Now back to my conversation with Kyle Martino. We picked up more or less where we left off when the phone cut out.
Yeah, sorry. One of the benefits of moving from Los Angeles to Connecticut is you get a lot of space. The negative is that you get no cell service.
There we go. Yeah, no problem.
So yes, I thought it was essential to make sure that you created a vision. A lot of candidates are promising that vision once they get into office, and I just don't know how you can ask a membership to take such a huge leap of faith that you will come up with that plan after you're already in there. So that's how I decided to go about this, and the response I've gotten from the membership confirms that was the right thing to do. They like, even though some of the issues I address in the progress plan and some of my ideas they might not entirely agree with, they like the discourse. They like someone willing to put ideas out there so they can be held accountable.
So I wanted to talk about two specific points. It's a question you got about in the presidential forum as well, was the question about diversity. In your plan, you establish a goal of improving Latino outreach, and one of the tenets is that you want it to be spearheaded by a chief diversity officer. Do you have an idea of what that position would entail and who you would like to serve in it, or is it more of just you want to get that position established first, then you'll see who's out there?
No, I've sounded out people for that position, and again, I don't think it's prudent to list names, but people that are incredibly connected and respected in those communities and have been working really hard in grassroots ways to try and grow the game there. And the Federation just hasn't plugged into that. And I think seeing the diversity task force that used to exist but 9 months ago disbanded without anyone knowing, that still has a link on the U.S. Soccer website, but if you click on it, it goes to a blank page. I mean, that's just emblematic of a federation that isn't paying attention to that space. And you can easily go through the budget and see $3 million in 1 year for a head coach, the same that they spent in 10 years on financial aid. It's just not a priority of theirs. So the responsibility is to help us see what we don't and help us get where we haven't and help serve the part of the membership that's incredibly underserved.
I really appreciate that. I believe I'm correct in saying the 3 times that your child has been audible in the background, all 3 times you were criticizing the U.S. Soccer Federation. So I feel like you've got him really on board. So that's good parenting right there.
Go for it, Dad.
Yeah, exactly. That's well done. The other big thing that I think merits mentioning, amongst many other things, is the 2030 project, where you outlined a 12-year strategy for creating an open-tiered professional structure, which I think is pretty admirable. One question I had, you specifically mentioned that the USL and the NASL will have pro rel between them from 2024 to 2030, I think it was. I wanted to know how you think Major League Soccer factors into that. Do you envision them being part of that pro rel system, or are they going to be sort of outside for the foreseeable future?
No. The 2030 is everyone.
Okay.
It's 6 tiers. So, yeah. One of the reasons that you have to create a long runway is because, and I know that pro-rel people don't want to hear this, but they have to start being realistic or else it's impossible to achieve what we all want to achieve. And, the people spearheading this group on Twitter have really harmed the movement because they're doing it in such a vitriolic way in an echo chamber that doesn't allow discourse. And you can argue I want it in 3 years or 4 years, but to say you can do it tomorrow is obtuse and it's harmful to the movement because legally you can't. A lot of these MLS teams have signed contracts and have millions and millions of dollars invested into a system that you can't just change day one. Now, buying into that doesn't offer them protection through eternity. Of course, you need to create a long enough runway to develop the infrastructure and the foundation that doesn't exist. NASL should be a league that is thriving. NASL should have a sanction, and NASL should have support. But one of the things you have to be honest about, and if you talk to the commissioner of NASL, Rishi will tell you this, they haven't lived up to the expectations they need to live up to. Now, some requirements are unfair, and some pressures put on them makes it hard for them to do so, but it's unrealistic to think you could just switch this thing on and that's some sort of silver bullet. It's not, and to think that is really harmful to an idea that I think is essential to open the system and create a true meritocracy that grows into every soccer market in this country. We're never going to, in the short term, close the quality gap between our professional leagues and La Liga and Bundesliga and Premier League. So how you close the ratings gap and the interest gap is through affinity, and affinity comes through your local club. So we have to create that incredibly compelling way for your local club to climb up the table and climb up the professional landscape. I mean, Leicester 5,000-1 is one of the greatest sports stories of all time. Not possible without that mechanism. So I absolutely hear people's criticisms that 2030 is way off in the future and that's too far away. And my answer is, throw down the pitchfork and pick up a pen and help everyone understand how we get there quicker. I'd love to understand how we can get there quicker, but it doesn't help to scream profanity and hyperbole from the sidelines. We need someone that believes in an open system in the office.
Yeah, I appreciate that you didn't use puppet anywhere in your plan. I think I've gotten kind of tired of being called a puppet.
Yeah, I mean that's just so it's really, I think, demonstrative of the movement doing itself a disservice. That some of these guys that run this have like this cult, prophet status that I think they enjoy. I think they enjoy being the leaders of a revolution and fear what happens if they get it and maybe they become irrelevant. I don't know, but a lot of them have done so much great work and have been pushing this for so long and actually have really great ideas. But that's when you talk to them privately. Publicly, they're these like cult of personalities, and what's crazy is they're arguing with and throwing vitriol and conspiracy theories against people that believe in opening the system, and that right there is exactly what's wrong with that movement. And fortunately, there are people doing it in the right way, and I think that's what will inevitably get it over the line.
Do you have an idea of how you might be able to get Major League Soccer on board or the MLS owners on board? Because obviously there's been considerable investment on their end, so probably not as inclined to have that open system.
Well, some of them actually do believe in it. Some of the MLS owners come from open systems and own teams that are in those leagues. So, of course, they've already bought into markets that have that structure and that competitive format. So, internally, I already know that some of these owners speak about this, and a disparity in investment has already begun where some MLS owners' budgets are double, triple, and quadruple what others are. And, of course, there's going to be friction when you're splitting certain parts of the revenue, but your operating cost is so much higher than others. But any way that it's done, it has to be done with a scalpel and not a sledgehammer. I mean, you have to try your best to extend olive branches to get everyone to the table, to understand that opening the system, it grows a soccer culture, which is good for everyone.
Final question before I let you go. Really appreciate your taking the time again. You've been endorsed by Street Soccer USA. Full disclosure, Daryl and I work with that organization here in Richmond. So I'm wondering, how did that endorsement come to be, and why do you think you're their preferred candidate?
Well, one of the reasons that I'm one of the only candidates out there that has a very diverse group willing to publicly support them is because I spent a lot of time as I first got into this election talking to people who aren't voters. And, Lawrence Cann, who's helping to run that organization, and Street Soccer, they don't have a vote in this election. And that doesn't mean they're not important. What they do, I think, is of the utmost importance. And I my whole life have been a person of integrity and a person creating bonds and relationships simply with soccer being the conduit and being the thing that brings us together. And Street Soccer was the same way. I just sat and I said, I see the grassroots movement. I see the underserved as being the first area that a president should try and address and focus on a strategy. So before I started talking to voters or special interest groups, I went straight to the people that grow the game at the local level and started working my way up the pyramid, because the 1% are fine. And obviously the system is set up really nicely for them. And, what I've come to find is the 1% aren't supporting me. There are a lot of U.S. Soccer board members that are out there lobbying for two candidates. I don't have any of their support. And so I'm probably an outsider in their mind because I see that growing this game is done from the bottom of the pyramid up, and they don't appreciate me putting a spotlight on some of the conflicts of interest, and they don't appreciate that I think that the 99% are more important than the 1%.
Well, with that in mind, I know you've got a lot of other phone calls to make, a lot of other politicking to do. But I want to say best of luck next weekend. We will be watching the election here in the studio. So if things go the way you hope they do, you've got our number. If you feel the need to chat, we'll be around.
I appreciate that. I look forward to seeing you guys down there.
All right. Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye.